Hello, everyone, and welcome to Resetting Your 2020 MSP Sales Plan. I'm Gary Pica, and I'll introduce you to my co-host in just a moment. This is a webinar between TruMethods and StorageCraft. Just a couple quick housekeeping items. One, if you have a question, put it into the questions pod. We will answer all of your questions. That's what we're here for. Number two, although we don't send the slides out, we are recording this and everyone will get within 24 hours, you're going to get the link, and we're going to try to pack a lot into this. So it's one of those things where you probably want to watch it again, or you're welcome to share it with others. With that, I get to introduce my co-host and longtime friend, Janine Edwards. Janine!
Hey pal, what's up?
How are you today?
Oh, just, living a quarantine life as we all are. Love it, loving it.
Yeah, I'm good. Like, listen, I find something, I want to be the best at it. If I'm going to quarantine,
We're gonna be the
I
best
want to
for
be the best quarantiner.
I got you. I'm here for it. Yes, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having us. You know how much I enjoy your wisdom. So thank you for letting us join and be a part of this.
Well, I gotta tell you, I'm doing a lot more content than normal right now because of everything that's going on, the impact of COVID, and it's really fun because everything has to change in terms of the approach that business people have to take. I have about 100 companies in our peer groups, and we're really working closely with them, and that helps us also stay close as to what's going on day to day. So this topic today around sales planning has a whole different flavor, right, than it did in January when we were talking about it.
Right.
So it'll be fun. And again, we'll answer people's questions today. Real quick, we have a couple things for you before we dive into the content. One, we're talking about sales today. If you want a little bit more help with this, we have this great ebook on sales, 3 top MSP sales mistakes. And if you just go to truemethods.com/sales, you can get that for free. And you're going to talk more about what you're doing in our for business continuity in our content today. But in the meantime, we want to make sure, Janine, that everybody goes and checks out this storagecraft.com/TM Solo.
Yeah, that's a dedicated link about the something exciting that we'll be talking about at the end. We are officially introducing a device that's very different for us. So we'll talk more about it at the end. But yeah, if you want to get more information on that, storagecraft.com/TM Solo.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to talk about resetting your 2020 MSP sales plan. And, we are all living, and I don't want to talk in general the world. Obviously, everybody else can talk about how the world's living in a new reality. I want to talk specifically about MSPs, right? Because that's where I spend all of my waking hours is working with MSPs. The MSP business has changed, right, dramatically in the past 6 weeks, mainly because the impact of COVID on our economy and on SMBs, our customers, small, medium-sized businesses, is dramatic. Janine, in fact, it's so dramatic that we don't really even can't see it exactly. In other words,
right.
There's no real models to tell us what will happen because the economy has never been in this type of a free fall in history, right? Like
Exactly.
I can't go back to Mesopotamia or anything, but I'm going to say in modern history, we've never seen, estimates of 20 to 30+% of the economy worldwide, pretty much completely shut down. But one thing we do know for sure is that things aren't going back to the way they were. Okay, and so I want to start off with some general perspective, and the first is this concept that we've developed called protect, look beyond, and thrive. And this is in all of the training that we're doing for the 1,000 MSPs that we work with around the world and in our peer groups. This is the way we want people to think about this year and where they are. First, you need to protect your MSP. And that means understanding what your risks are, having more information, having more leading indicators, to, so that you can make sure that you don't have an issue with cash and other things that make you make bad decisions. Once you've done that, you want to start to look beyond. And our topic for today really is a look beyond topic. And everybody now needs to start thinking about what has to change in their offering, what has to change in their company, in their customer relationship, also in their sales approach, because everything's going to be more important. And if we can put the right things in place, Jeanine, I believe that this year is a year where MSPs should be thinking that they can still thrive. And I don't like when I hear people almost like kind of throwing the towel in a little bit, like, oh well, listen, yeah, it's the COVID. We're gonna ride it out. No, there's no riding out. There is dealing with the reality of the situation, making adjustments, and getting back to running and growing your business. Are you with me on this?
Yes, yes. And I think I'm interested to see what your thoughts are. I'm sure you're going to talk about it as to do they have to be in a certain state, right, of profitability and operations maturity to do that. So I'm excited to see what you have to say about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because look, here's the bad news. The worldwide economy has retracted significantly, is may not even be a strong enough word. So we don't know what's going to happen, but we know the best case scenario is a difficult recovery. So you can assume moving forward, probably 10 to 20% of your monthly recurring revenue, but moving forward, not just what's happened in the short term, could potentially be at risk, whether that's a company that goes out of business or whether it is a retraction in terms of just look at the unemployment numbers and you can apply those. So if you look at the macroeconomics and how it's going to impact, most regions and most vertical markets, this is what you have to be prepared for. And that's why growing new logo business is so important. The good news is that our customers, SMB's tech spending as a percentage of revenue, which has been increasing now for the past 7 to 8 years and beyond, is going to increase again. Jeanine, we saw it in 2000, and then we saw it again in 2008. And now, because SMBs are more technology dependent, I believe this bump will even be more. So think about it. Small businesses, we get into a retracted economy, okay? What do they need to do? They need to be able to be more profitable and do more with less. The first thing they look to do is figure out how they can leverage technology better, right? Things they could have done before, but they didn't really need to for during an 11-year bull run. Like a rising tide was floating all ships, including the MSP business, right? So now they're going to look. And so we saw it in the last two recessions, and I believe we're going to see it in spades. So that's good news. So that means that all of our customers, technology is going to be more important to them, and they're going to be investing more as a percentage of their revenue. Other side of this, and you could look at this as bad or good, we're going to make it good based on what we talk about today, but about over 30% of SMBs last month, in the last 3 weeks that were surveyed, said they would consider a change in IT providers. That number was 5% pre-COVID. Just in January, it was 5%. So now if you're one of the 30% and who's, customers are looking to change, and that would be we move that up the bad news. But if you are locking down your customer base and you're going to start to put more time and effort into sales, this is really good. It means there's a better market. If more people are changing, that's more prospects for us. And it should be easier to sell value from what they've experienced and how they have to depend on technology. So Jeanine, is this concept making sense that this actually is good news, like that there's opportunity right now?
What do you think, just out of curiosity, just based on, what do you think's driving, just like you said, SMB tech spend would be higher because they're looking at automation, et cetera, so they don't find themselves in a situation where they're losing costs ineffectively. What's driving these end customers at this time to say, I might need to look at another MSP? Is it because they want to shop price, or is it because they want more for their money? What do you think? Why do you think that number jumped in this time?
So there was 3 or 4 reasons that were on the survey that I saw, and they interviewed. I think it was a survey, pretty good random survey that came from the what do you call it? Small Business Council.
SBA?
Mm, they have them in every town.
Oh, okay, right. Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Chamber of Commerce, right? It was
Yeah.
national.
Yeah.
So price was on there, but it was not the highest one.
Right.
The main reasons were um, quality of service. I think this showed a lot of warts.
Right.
With everything moving to work from home, it showed some warts. Also, feel like they need higher level of service. In other words, if you were an MSP that said you were proactive, but you mainly were reactive, but you took good care of your customers, now these changes happen, and all of these decision makers, like they're looking to have a strategic relationship now. Like they're looking to say, wait a minute, I got to set all my plans, and one of those is technology. If you haven't built that relationship and aren't looking to build that, they're going to find somebody who will, right? They just don't want to know that that their licensing expired and they need to renew it. They need to think about how they can use technology. Most people tell me, anyone you talk to, they're not going back to doing business the exact same way.
Right.
Something in their business model of every single business leader, and I talk to about 10 or 15 business people a week, right? Has told me that multiple things in their business model is going to change. When that happens, you have different needs that you need from your MSP now than you did before. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So here's the thing, because of all this, you can't simply react to this situation. If all you're going to do is get up every day and deal with these external factors and just keep making different decisions, you're never going to get to see the opportunity in this. Okay. And that's going to increase your risk because other people already are. So, what worked pre COVID in sales? What worked pre COVID in customer relationship? In having command over the things that drive your profit drivers aren't going to work post COVID. In other words, all MSPs need to be better business operators now. That's what happened. And Janine, the hard part is, we work with a lot of people. They built their business in the past 11 or 12 years. They basically built it in a historic bull run, right? In the time when SMBs are going through their tech revolution. So you could do a bunch of things, maybe not the way, with enough discipline, and still run a business that would be growing every year and still throwing 10 or 12% to the bottom line, but it's not that way when you enter into a recession. So right now there's many more things that are out of your control, which I don't like personally. I like as many things in control as possible. But when that happens, okay, you need to drive the things that you do control with much more intention, right? Customer relationship, profitability, sales process that we're going to talk about today. You have to be more intentional on the things you do control. And the people that do that, you're going to see more of a separation in MSPs, Janine, over the next couple years. And you've already started to see it. More and more business has been going to companies that are a little bit more mature, have a few more employees, they have a sales or marketing process. But this is going to accelerate that. So wherever you are today, your defense and your way to optimize this is by having more control over the things that you can. And so in looking beyond, we look at 4 or 5 things, but I just picked out, in our training for our TruMethods members, but I picked out 3 today that I think are really important. So business development, better relationships. I'm going to put that under better VCIO, and then security and business continuity. And you're going to help me out with that, Janine. So that's the area. So let's start with sales in the COVID-19 world. First, here's some frequently asked questions. Should we be prospecting at this time? I get that question a lot. Like, everyone's going through all this? Is it appropriate to prospect? Yes. Yes, it is. Should your messaging be the same as it was 6 weeks ago? No, absolutely not. The messaging has to pivot. Are MSPs signing new MSP agreements? In other words, are MSPs signing new deals right now? Yes, I'm watching it happen in my customer base every day. Okay. Will I regret abandoning or not putting more intention around my sales discipline? Yes. I don't know. Maybe we can just end here. I answered all the questions.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is also interesting because I do think it's universal across any sales organization, right? And I love this, right? Because I think the smaller the business, they're like they're wondering if it's appropriate or if it's fruitful to prospect, right? And so I think this is a great short list to constantly look at all the time if you're in any kind of sales capacity, if you're looking for revenue of any kind, right? So I love this slide. Love it.
Absolutely. And again, like, True Methods, we do training software and peer, but we're taking the same exact advice that we're giving here. What we're going to do in the next, this section in the next 15 or 20 minutes, we're just going to talk about it specifically for MSPs. But you're right. Every SMB needs to be thinking in the same way right now.
Yeah, and I think as an SMB, partner, an outsourced partner, you should be thinking about them as well, doing the same thing and helping them utilize their technology, their outsourced technology, management to help them do that, right? So I think this is a need for them as well, right? And how can you help them do these things?
Right, because if you think about it, their customer relationship, their ability to add new revenue,
Mhm.
um, those two things, that's universal across all companies right now.
Yep.
And we can help them, and we have perspective. So when it comes to business development, here's the thing: number one is priority. Okay, you have to put more time and attention. If you are a business owner right now, specifically an MSP, you have to put more priority on business development than you did prior to this change in our world and our economy. You have to have focused effort, which means you have to have the right activities and the right target prospects. So instead of using, in a bull run economy, you can use more of a shotgun, but now we're going to need to use more of a rifle, and you're going to have more accountability. And if you think about it, right, you're gonna look, you have to learn how to sell in this current environment. If you're just sitting there saying, well, look, I'm just going to wait it out, and when it goes back to the way it was, then I'll just go back to the way I was, you're going to be waiting for a long time, maybe too long. So you have to pivot your messaging. You have to adjust your sales process. We have people right now that are, their sales process going on in areas where they're quarantined. You can still weigh, and we're going to talk about how to do your sales process. And you have to enhance your value proposition. This is a time where customers need MSPs more, so we have to find ways of being more valuable. And I see, Janine, some people doing the opposite. They want to cut costs, and they're cutting tools and service and people and process that are actually making them less valuable to your customers. That is not a good plan. You do not want to be less valuable to your customers at this point. That's the opposite. And one thing you have to think about MSPs, and you've been working with them, for as long as I have, Janine, right? Back
Yep.
since we've been doing it together since 2008, right?
I mean, since we were 10.
Since we were 10 years old, exactly. And the average MSP, think about how much of their resources, their attention, their metrics, their focus go on to service delivery. Then
Yep.
relative to that, how much time, attention, accountability, priority do they have on adding new customers, the lifeblood of the customer? And the answer is usually a fraction, almost none. So right now, you have to raise this priority. New customers are way more valuable today. That new revenue is way more valuable today than it was before. So you have to prioritize it accordingly. So if you already have a business development function, that means, you have some resources that are dedicated to sales, inside sales, outside sales, marketing, whatever it might be. You need to create a new plan. You need to inspect who, how, not just how many. So in other words, not just activities around sales and marketing, but who are you targeting, right? And how are you targeting them? We want to be really effective. There is a unique time frame we have right now where prospects are listening with a different set of ears. So with that, we want to be more effective. And if you have a team, you need to start having daily huddles. Anything you want to have happen, Janine. I know right now we have a couple things going on at TruMethods, and I'm on 2 extra 15-minute huddles, a day, one around operations and one around sales. so that we can get realigned to making sure that we are hyper focused on the right things within our company. And then as they stabilize, you can go down to, 3 days a week or 2 days a week. But right now, if you have a business development function and you're not having daily huddles, you're not pivoting. You can't possibly pivot without that type of attention. If you don't have a really good business development function, in other words, you've just gotten some referrals and the owner goes out, now's the time. You probably don't have a plan. Now is the time to create a plan. You can start with some of the things we're going to talk about with focusing on warm leads, things that have the highest close ratio, and you need to put at least weekly accountability in place where once a week you're looking at your results or activity and results and start to be accountable. Like anything else, there's nothing else that happens in the business that's good, in whether it's in service delivery or finance, that doesn't have accountability and doesn't have some metrics where you're gauging your success, Janine, as you move forward. And again, we've gotten away with a lot that we're not going to get away with as things change moving forward. So also it's a good time, like, to be thoughtful about your approach. Janine, we need to think about, like, what businesses will thrive in the recovery. And some of them might be counterintuitive. We're starting to see it, right? And which ones will have the toughest recovery? Um, I have a friend who's a dentist, really hard on him, man. But the good news is when things eventually open up, there'll still be teeth, right? There's still going to be teeth.
One can hope, yes.
My best friend is a podiatrist. He's starting to see patients on a small scale today for the first time. But the same thing, I'm like, I know this is hard on you. I said, but dude, there's still going to be feet, right?
Right.
So, and then which are some of the verticals, hey, that could potentially do better? You got people that do different types of office furniture. There's a good one I might talk to. Everybody's changing their office, setup, at this point.
Right.
So just kind of think through. And one way to do it is by talking to your customers about their customers. So how are your customers planning and what are they seeing for the rest of the year? And then what about their customer base? And if you have enough of those conversations with prospects and customers, you start to get a good idea of where these pockets are of people that are going to be, you would want to prioritize, that are going to thrive in the recovery. Also, be more sensitive about what size companies you want to focus on. I mean, maybe one thing you've learned through this is the impact of your customer base and how this, not just based on the kind of business, but how has this impacted your customers based on the size of their business? Maybe you want to focus on a little larger customers at this point, right? And then what activities in sales and marketing will have the biggest return on investment at this time? Once you do that, you can start to set some meaningful activity goals. So we use this in our coaching program, the sales goal calculator, but this is a great time to revisit it. You have to reset your goal for new MRR for the remainder of 2020. Really focus on what your average contract value is. And if you can focus on the right verticals, with the right size companies and you have the right offering, maybe you can, instead of saying, hey, my average customer might only be worth a couple thousand today, but I'm going to target people that are on average going to be worth $3,000 a month to me moving forward. If you can do that, you can make your sales goal, 30% more achievable. And then, determine how much pipeline, how many prospects you need to have that you're working on at any given time. And you can start to figure out, like, what is some of the math. And then once you have the math, now you know what you need to be accountable for, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis in order, again, showing that this is a priority. And if you use activities and you do something every week for this intentionally, you will get better results. The next thing I want to talk about is messaging. One of the things here, Janine, we said, in one of my questions, is it appropriate to prospect now? And the answer was yes. Can you use the same messaging? No. People are going through all this. They're working in a different environment. You want to call a decision maker up and say, do you want to buy from me yet? I don't know that that's the best approach, at this point. Instead, maybe we're pivoting our message to be of real value, right? To be able to reach out to them and, just say to them, hey, listen, How are things going? Did you have to make the pivot? Are you essential? Did you pivot to work from home? How did that go? Awesome. We've just done it for 30, 40 customers, and now we've been successful at it. So we're reaching out to some folks in the community. We want to review with them and share with you like a little checklist, about some of the things to make sure that you feel comfortable that nothing got missed through all this. And we're kind of doing it when we're doing it without asking anything in return. So find places to share what you've learned and be valuable. Start off by asking them, how they are. Be curious with people, right? Be curious with them. So I like the word, Janine, contextual marketing. Like, we have to market, and our sales messaging has to be in the context of how things are different today than they were before. And if you do that, can you feel how that sounds? The way I'm approaching it?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of goes along with your pivot, right? So if you had a plan, which we all do as far as marketers, right? The plan we're going to say for the next 2-6 months, you better be rethinking that to exactly what you said, marketing that's contextual, right? And about right now.
We have to change. What did Mike Tyson say? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Right.
Right? And so a lot of people got punched in the mouth. And so this is part of making that new plan. So, and this takes a little thought, like sit down, if it's just you or people on your team, and really think of this and say, how does our messaging need to change? And how can we be of value in a sincere way to make more relationships with business leaders right now and help them? Because if you do that, you will create and get prospects. I'll tell you a quick story. One of my customers, they have an inside salesperson, outbound dialer, and they're part of our, we have about 100 of them that are in a community we call inside sales champions. And we've been helping people pivot their message, on this, and they made a call and set up a virtual first-time appointment, like a Zoom meeting for their owner to talk to the person. And when the customer kind of pushed back, like, listen, we're not looking at anything new right now. The response that we taught them was, well, listen, I'll be honest, we're pretty busy taking care of our customers. We're actually not onboarding any new customers at this time.
Yeah.
And that kind of took the air out of it and said, based on that, here's why we think it will be of value and how we're trying to help people. He took the call, he got on with the business owner, walked them through what they were doing, gave them some resources that they could use to make sure that things were done right at their place. And that afternoon, the phone rang, and the prospect called back the owner of the MSP and said, listen, I've been thinking about this. I've been looking into this. I know you said that you're not taking on any more customers at this time. Would you consider working with us?
Yeah.
He said yes. He said yes.
I also, of course he did. I also love this sincere bullet, right? Because I think what's also really interesting right now in a sales conversation would be transparency, right? So I think, transparency is always a big high end for me as far as conversations and who I am. But I think we're all, like you said in the beginning, there's no model for this. We don't all know how to, there's no model for traversing this, insane, environment, right? So, and I think there's never been a better time to be a real human. You know what I mean? I think it goes far right now.
Yeah, instead of every commercial that you see, you know what I mean? Like a car manufacturer whose sales are down 50%, trying to tell me that we're all in it together, and the way he's going to help me is by making me have a car loan for 84 months and being cement on my car.
We're all in it together.
But we're not. We're all in this apart right now. If that's the case, and you want to make me have an 84-month loan on a car, so that's the part about being sincere. And in my example, you can hear really just offering value, and anything that comes the other way is just something that comes natural, right? Changing the process. Like right now, in a lot of areas around the world, people aren't in their offices, you can't go there. So we pivoted and helped our members set up a process for virtual FTAs to be able to set it up. They do them on a Zoom or other video kind of thing, changed the agenda to a value-driven agenda. So it's not the same agenda we used to have when we were visiting them on a normal sales call, and then finding appropriate follow-up steps. So we had to start with almost a blank sheet of paper. And what's happened is a lot of people are having success with it. And what they're determining now is, hey, as things start to go back where people are back in their offices and we're starting to have on-site meetings again, what did we learn from this? And like all of them are saying, hey, pieces of this we're going to put into our new sales process. We think we can get in front of more people. We think we can increase our close ratio. We think we can make our drive time more valuable. It's not going to replace what we did, but we've learned something from it. But the way it starts now is, and I've heard some people say, well, we can't do sales because we can't go see anybody. No, you can. We're doing it, right?
Yeah. Can you, am I bad if I don't know what FTA means? Can you tell me what
Oh,
that is?
sorry. Thanks. That's, you know what? I'm glad you asked that because other people, that's first time appointment.
Oh, okay. All right. Good, good.
So sales call, that's a sales call, a
Yeah, got it.
virtual first meeting, like, what you would set up from sales or marketing. So I'm glad you asked me that. We have a lot of TLAs at TruMethods, three-letter acronyms.
Three-letter acronyms. I got that one. I was with you on that one.
Okay, so let's drill down now into inside sales. So if you do inside sales right now, in other words, you have someone who's out making calls, doing outreach, this is the time when you have to double down on discipline. You want to make sure you're controlling your actions, your reactions, and your mindset. Pick up the phone right now. People will talk to you. We have seen the ratio, we track ratios for dials to conversations, and we've seen that ratio go up over the past 6 weeks. And sometimes they can't get people off the phone. Like, people want to talk. And think how interesting MSPs have become. We're way more interesting now. You talk to a customer and you're dealing, with maybe 30 or 40 or 50 other customers. We have kind of a unique view of what's going on in the marketplace. And again, people want to talk about what's happening to them. So in marketing, you have to be even more careful, Janine, about your messaging. Like, be pure content and value. When you're talking to someone on the phone, it's a little easier to be sincere because I'm hearing your reaction, Janine, right? And if I feel like it's not coming across the way I'm intended, I can clean up after myself. I can re-explain it and reassure people. But when you send an email or a social media post or a video or whatever it else is that's marketing, they can only judge you on that. So after you've done something, before you use it, get someone else to take a look at it. Like, just spend a little extra time to making sure that your intentions and your sincerity, because it's harder in marketing to make that come through, right? Like the commercial I said. I'm sure that Toyota or Kia, whoever it was, the marketing people, pivoted quickly. And then, in the first 30 seconds, I'm like, oh, we're not in this together, right?
Yeah, I mean, I deal with it every day. I mean, I'm obviously a chief, a marketer here, right? One of the
Yeah.
chief marketers. So it's tough because you want to make sure, like you said, you're staying true, but you're also in business to sell, right? So this is so important. Be careful of your messaging and make sure at this time you're bringing more value and bringing the differentiator in the contextual messaging that you talked about before right up front.
Yeah. And, really, this is the sales process and the approach, giving value and having everything else come from that value that I've been teaching MSPs for the past decade. They just haven't had to follow it to this degree. Again, because of the economy and the SMB tech expansion. Now, I think this is a great learning lesson for everybody that is going to help them on the other side of this. You're going to learn what happens with this type of approach, and hopefully you'll keep it in place, long after this current short-term situation, and into what comes, whatever it is that comes next. And then the same thing, outside sales or owner-led sales, we're telling people now is to turn the funnel upside down. You want to start with your warmest prospects first. You want to be talking to everybody, like anyone who said no to you in the past 18 months. If you haven't already reached out to them, like you need to do it in 25 minutes when this is over. Like as soon as we sign off, you need to go and start doing that. You need to let them know that you're there, that you're concerned, that you're reaching out for them because you've had a relationship with them, and look and do it in a way to provide that real value and share experience and knowledge. You know what you experienced when you helped your customers through this, in this recent time, what you've seen your customers experience. This is a chance to build really valuable relationship with prospects and be a connector. Talk to one of your prospects and about their business and say, you know what, I have another customer, or I have another prospect that dealt with that same thing, or they're in a similar business. How would it be if I connected you two people? And ask nothing in return, right? If you do this, a certain amount of people you're going to build a relationship and you're going to sell them over the next year. And so if you do enough of it, we're already seeing some percentage of it will lead you to ask, can you help me? They will give you permission to then turn it into more of a sales conversation. That's where you want to live right now. So I say turn that funnel upside down. You have, suspects at the top. They're just people that are in your database you don't know much about. Then you have prospects. They're people you've spoken to. You at least know generically they fit what would be a good prospect. You have those warm people. These are the ones that you've, talked with in depth or maybe met with and didn't sell. You want to focus on those. And then at the bottom, you may have people that are making a go, no go decision. They're already in your sales cycle. But you want to start at the bottom and you want to move upwards on that. So when I want you to picture this, when you think about your sales outreach, when you think about your marketing, you want to start by aiming it at those people that you have the most relationship, the warmest ones, and then kind of move up the channel right now because there's low-hanging fruit and you want to make sure you capture it. Along those lines, Janine, you really want to think about warm lead generation sources right now. Number one, COIs, another three-letter acronym, centers of influence. Do you already have companies in your area that have the same target market? They work with the same type of companies and they deal with the same decision maker that you do, that you can work, on lead sharing, doing events together, those kind of things. If this is a time to lean on them. If you don't have that, this is a time to start reaching out, and everybody's looking for new ways to join together and help each other in this way. So it's a really fertile time to develop those. I'm going to say I've owned and scaled 2 MSPs, and in both of them, like in the first one, once we matured our kind of sales and marketing engine, I'm going to say that probably 40 or maybe even 50% of our new business, and we were closing over $100,000 in new monthly recurring revenue a year once we got it cranked up, came from COI relationships, Janine. Think about that for a second, right? That's not marketing cost. That's not outbound sales cost. That is relationship referrals that were 40 to 50%. This is a time to lean on those. Warm 250 process, I kind of already touched on that. Start at the bottom of your funnel. Your referral approach. Listen, all business owners are sharing more now with each other. This is a great time to talk to your current customers and ask them like, hey, I'm glad you shared kind of how you're doing and we're getting on the same page. What about other business leaders? What are you finding out? Do you know other business people in the community? How are they making out? It'll open up ideas where you'll find out and naturally you'll see those referrals start to flow. And a great time to leverage LinkedIn right now, right? Because they're the people that you're connected to. So you want to start with warm lead generation sources. Does all this concept now making sense how it all fits together? New plan, what to focus on, changing your messages, where to start.
Absolutely.
Pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next, I want to talk about better VCIO, enhanced customer relationship, because this also affects revenue. retaining your current revenue and building revenue. There's a great opportunity to build revenue right now within your customer base that we're seeing a lot of people that have already taken advantage of it. I do weekly podcast little messages to my customer base, and this one that's coming out today, I think, it's called "Your Customer Just Got a Promotion." And the idea of it is, look, we're in a service business, so customer, satisfaction is always important. But right now, just having CSAT scores or response time metrics isn't really enough. Our customer and the focus and how we focus on them has to increase. So right now, the customer more than ever is at the center of so many things. One, they're the center of our monthly recurring revenue. Like, have you done an analysis? We came up with a form, an evaluator in questions for everyone to put a risk factor on every one of their customers, how likely they are if their business may not survive or if it may not thrive. We want to get that risk factor. We can only get that from our customers. How will that impact maybe our accounts receivable and our cash moving forward? What's going to happen with our future project work? Don't forget, Janine, most MSPs need non-recurring services and hardware margins in order to stay profitable. So are your customers going to continue with the same plans that they had over the next quarter? Most of my customers are saying that they're not. So what does that mean to us? And are there other recommendations that we can make that we're going to talk about? What new opportunities will there be? Talking with your customers about how they see their recovery and what will happen. As you start to talk to all your customers, you'll start to see, hey, what are prospect opportunities of people that are in the same boat of my customers that are going to have the best recovery? You need to look to them for what their unwinding is going to look like. We had this big surge, right, to go to work from home. There'll be another type of surge in the future, but we want to be more proactive in making sure that we have our arms around it and do it more profitably. And then I already kind of touched on the evolving customer relationship. What they need more from us is they need more strategy, and we're going to dive into that. So you have to evolve the VCIO conversation. You really need to understand your customer's situation. So here's one big thing, Janine. If you're not in a situation today where you're dealing with decision makers, right, at every account, you're going to have problems doing this. So knowing what their plans are, how they're being impacted, what their recovery looks like, how their strategic plans are changing, so that you can figure out how their technology roadmap and strategy roadmap for technology has to change. If you're not dealing with the decision makers, you're not going to be able to get there. So you need to understand all this. Share what you're doing, share what you're learning, find out how you can help, right? Anything that helps the customer navigate the crisis right now is valuable. You need to be valuable and visible to your customers, not cutting services and cutting your best people. You may need to cut expenses, but you better cut from fat, because if you cut into muscle, you're going to have a much harder recovery. And then your customer look beyond. What's their expectation around their recovery and how long it will take or how slow it'll be? How are your customers going to maximize revenue until the recovery? How are they going to use, if they have idle resources, how are they putting them to use? What new products or services have their attention? So all of this starts to paint a picture of, are we making the right recommendations? Are the recommendations we made in the past still valid? And then planning their unwinding. What new technologies will support whatever their new normal is going to be? Is it more remote, more capabilities? Is it more around how they do collaboration? And then the timing, right? I mentioned that there was a surge going to COVID. There'll be one leaving. We don't want it to be as reactive, and we don't want to see our boards light up in the same way. We have a chance, and the only way we're doing it is by talking to those customers. So you need to revisit the strategic roadmaps more often for your customers. Are the previous recommendations still valid from your standpoint and for theirs? Like, they may have told you that they're going to spend money in the next quarter, and if you don't ask them, you don't know whether that's still true. What new recommendations should you be making? And we're going to tell you a couple that I already know make sense and I'm seeing it happen. Factor in their changes, add your view of technology. Uh, Janine, I think every MSP is viewing things a little differently when they moved a big portion of their users that they were supporting to work from home. Everyone's telling me they're viewing technology differently than they did before this, right?
Outside the perimeter, the perimeter of security, it's just so many things to think about, right? Ransomware, heightened ransomware. What I love about this though is going back to what you said, and for the virtual, first meetings, don't let customers, if you're having these recurring meetings, don't let them cancel them. Just pivot and make sure that you're having them, virtually if need be, right? But the important thing is to have these conversations in a meaningful, intentional way, even though they're changing a little bit. You know what I mean?
We need to have them more often. Like if you were meeting with customers quarterly, right? Two things need to change. One, you need to be talking to them monthly right now because they're recalibrating their plans. Okay.
Right.
So it needs to be once a month virtually. And then the second thing is the content of those meetings has to be more strategic. So we teach, here's how I would tell you to visualize it. And this is how we teach it in our software, MyT process, is to have some type of strategic roadmap to say, listen, can we look at what we talked about over the next 4 quarters? Are these still necessary to support your changing plan? Do you know? Do you not know? What should we plan on? And then be able to say, hey, I have 3, 4 recommendations that I'm making now that I might not have made 6 weeks ago, right? That you need to consider about changes in our relationship, investments that we think you need to make. And so if you're not doing this today, this is where you need to be with every customer because this is what they need. And if you don't provide it, somebody else will. Because we're training a bunch of people. We've already trained a bunch of people to do it. So I can tell you, this is where, yeah, this is where you need to live. And with that, specifically, let's drill down into security and business continuity. So the SMB technology topology has changed dramatically, right, in a short time frame. We've established that. You need to first revisit your standards, your alignment, compliance, documentation. A lot of people either didn't have standards or they changed them, Janine. Maybe their standard was before, hey, if you have someone who needs to work from home, here's how they got to do it. They got to come into their desktop. They can't use they can't run apps or do native things on a home-owned machine. Well, maybe you changed all that because you had to through this, right? And so their risk went up. You got to revisit those standards. You got to see where they're in or out of your alignment. In terms of security compliance, make sure that things are, again, properly documented the way they were before. You got to review your security tools and process. This is the time to build a culture of security. And a culture of security means, like anything else, if you have a culture of sales, you have dedicated roles, you have process, you have tools, you have metrics, you have accountability. You need to have that around security. And as we're going to talk about next, around disaster recovery, business continuity, and discuss changes and upgrades with every customer. And let me tell you how that sounds. We have some of our members going back to their customers and saying to them, listen, we made some changes. There's also new threats. There are threats right now that are happening because of this. The bad guys have reacted pretty quickly to this. And to address it, we've added some new tools. We have to add some new process. And the bottom line is, I know you spend $3,000 a month with me and you're not looking to increase expenses, but to do this, it's going to be an investment of another $300 to $400 a month. And I can't make it optional because neither of us can live with this risk. And some people, again, push back and say, this is not the time to raise your customers' prices. No, you're not raising their prices. You're dealing with their situation and helping them through it in this way. And if someone spends $3,000 a month with me as an MSP, they have expenses of $300,000 or $400,000 a month. We're really small. So it's not like they're not making any investments. $300 or $400 a month is nothing to them. What is big to them? Having right now in the middle of all this and having some security breach would be disastrous.
Yeah.
Disastrous, right? Not being able, you're going to talk about business continuity on the next slide. Not being able to recover from an issue would be way more disastrous. So what I'm saying is you can make recommendations on projects, and this is also a great time to bring all of your customers up to the level of offering that you want them to have, because now they're listening, Janine.
Yeah.
See, I'm all fired up now.
Yeah. I could tell. I could tell. It's going to be
And
okay. We're
then
going to
and then the other side of it, right, is business continuity. I think everyone has to think about both security and business continuity a little bit differently now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said a couple of things that I want to just connect the dots on. You know, in addition to the short list of things from a sales perspective, I think when it comes to a technology portfolio and your managed offering, that there's actually never been a more important time to optimize that offering so that you're also using technology that optimizes your service desk, right?
Yeah.
And does and again fits in with this new world of a remote worker. How many times you're not able to roll folks on site like you used to be, right? Like you want to be able to manage technology with ease of deployment, right? And in our case, ease of recovery, because just like you said, today is the day. It was already happening before COVID, but these nasty, nefarious people are taking advantage of this environment more so than ever as far as ransomware goes. So, you know, when you think about business continuity and you think about data protection, it's made up of basically two components, and that's backup and recovery. Recovery is now coming up into, you know, the protection piece. The backup piece is an important check mark, and it's an understood. I think we're moving into the recovery era, right? And so the first thing that your customer cares about, should they be, and they will be. Did you know that a small business is compromised every 15 seconds right now?
I do know that. Yeah, I'm on a cyber call, MSP cyber call every Monday, and that just came up. Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, and how's that going to change? How's that going to change with these crazy people that really want to utilize managed service providers and their, you know, and infiltrate these to get to more, you know, scale, right? So what the other thing I think is really important to talk about, and I think you talked about standards, well, specifically technology standards, and everyone knows that technology standards, right, driving technology standardization is on the short list for driving up your service desk profitability and maturity, right? So, but what's interesting in this category, in business continuity, did you know that 3 out of 4 MSPs have more than 3 data protection solutions in their arsenal that they're giving to their—
I did not know that, but I'm not surprised. Anecdotally, I'm amazed by that.
Yeah. So we thought it was our job. We go into innovation, right? Before COVID and during COVID, especially, what are the things that we can bring you to arm your tool set to allow you to, again, bring your customer, especially at the S and in the lower end of the M, right, confidence that they need to make sure that should they and will they, right, be compromised, that you have them up and running, especially right now. Just like you said, it would be more than disastrous. So we have worked really hard to change this perception across the competitive set that says there's technology gaps across all the competitors, right, that don't allow us to standardize. We wanted to go under the hood and make sure that our innovation allowed you to solve the challenges of evergreen challenges that your customers are having as it relates to technology and business continuity, but specifically, right, across this particular time, right? So if you take a look at this graph, what we've done is we've said, okay, depending on who you are, obviously in this call, we're looking at MSPs, right, that are leading with the MSP business model and who you service. We wanted to create, we want to be one of the only providers, right, the technology partners that created a solution set that spanned the entire category. And one of the things we're super excited about, and if you could just kind of, is the one on the bottom left, especially right now. I think if you build it, it'll circle. It's called OneSafe Solo.
Okay.
If those of you are familiar with us, right, with us for a long time, you know that we've mostly been in software. And we felt like there was a gap around the device, right, the small, what's typically known as an off-the-shelf BDR. So we've created something very different. It's an appliance-based, a direct-to-cloud piece of protection that's powered by our brand new software called ShadowSafe. And we think it's a great time for partners to be looking at this to drive standardization, technology standards specifically, as you talked about, but also to bring customers, especially the SMB, protection that they deserve. Real quick, the best piece of this is you can have a drop ship to the customer. They get it. They log on to their PSA. They put a ticket in. They tell you they got it. They plug it in and connect it to the internet, and you'll be able to manage them right from our cloud portal right there. So very differentiated, and we're really excited about it.
Awesome. And if you think about it again, I put these two things together, security and business continuity, because they fit together in that conversation of things right now that customers are listening to, right? They're listening to it in a way that's a little different than they were before this. They're understanding their risks more than they were before. So this is a chance in both categories to get the solution out there that you want and to get all your customers up. And by the way, the result of it is building a stronger relationship, having your customers be, safer and more secure, but also you're going to generate more revenue from your base, which is really important, right, for profitability. We love new logos, but this gross margin goes right to the bottom line. So it's super, super important. And then we're going to tell people where they can go in a minute to learn more about that. So just a summary, focus every week on business development. If you're not doing that, you need to start doing it for adding new logo sales. Enhance your current offering, what Janine and I just talked around. Build a strategic roadmap for every customer and have additional focus and discipline around security and business continuity. So if you want a little more help on sales, go to TruMethods, no E in true.com/sales, and you can get the free ebook. And Janine, for what you were just talking about.
Yeah, so again, there's a new device.
You always have slides that build. You always have building slides.
Because it helps me, and I should realize that I have to, be prepared for my co-host. We want to make sure that you understand that this is a very differentiated device for a very different time. So we have a couple of ways for you guys to get your hands on it. We know that the service desk, right, is the place where technology champions are born. So head over to storagecraft.com/TM-Solo, and you can find out about the ways. We have an NFR program. We have a try and buy program, which is kind of cool. Or just find out more about it. It's called OneSafe Solo. Again, it is our first foray into a small form factor device, and we're really, really pleased with it. And we're pleased to bring it to you, especially right now when data protection is so important for your customers.
Awesome. Great job, Janine.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for letting us hang out with you. What a great conversation. I thought that was really, 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 really some awesome bits that I will take back to even our sales team. Really great reminders of how to be crisp and clean during this time and be relevant.
Yeah, and I want people to be optimistic, right? Yeah. That whenever things change, look, not all MSPs are going to fare the same in this, but everyone gets to make a choice about which side of the equation that they're on. And everyone's going to need to add new skill sets, have new priorities and attention. But if you do, you're going to maintain that. And I tell my, TruMethods members and my peer members, look, here's how we're looking at it. A year from now, we all want to look back and say, wow, that was the best thing that ever happened to us, right? That's the position that you want to be in. And that is by putting your hands on the right levers, not letting this thing and this change in economy just happen to you. That's what I want people to walk away with today.
Great. I love it. And I think you're right. Cautiously optimistic is the way to be.
Yeah, man. Plan for the worst, right? Hope for the best is what most people say. And I'm like, no, we're planning for the best.
Planning for the best.
Yeah, we're planning for the best. All right, Janine, thanks, and make it a great day.
You too. Thanks so much, Gary.